Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 mini-series with the Los Angeles Angels. And the 2026 season has been going much better than 2025 for our Angels. We were 64 and 98 a year ago when we took the team over in March. Couldn't really make many changes before the season got underway. But we are a playoff contender this year, albeit on the margins of the playoffs. A 55 and 51 record for our Angels through August 1st has us 3 games behind in the American League West and 2 games behind the final wild card spot in the American League. So certainly wouldn't view us as a favorite to make the playoffs at this point, but feeling somewhat comfortable that we will go from 64 wins a year ago to a winning record this year, which will represent significant progress if we're able to achieve that. It'll mean we're at least 18 games better than we were a year ago. And still can't be ruled out that we'll make the playoffs. As I mentioned, certainly not favorites, but we did make a few moves as the trade deadline approached, which we hope will ultimately give us a better chance. We picked up lefty Gabe Speier from the Seattle organization. He had spent most of the year in AAA, given the depth that they have. He's already pitched 2 games for us, which is more than the 1 game he pitched in the majors with Seattle, but figure he can be a good, solid lefty specialist for us, although he's given up 1 run in the 1 inning that he's pitched for us thus far, but obviously a very small sample size. Lineup-wise, we ended up making 3 moves, all rentals. Picked up Joc Pederson to be our left fielder against right-handed pitching from Texas. He's off to a good start with a .316 average, 4 homers, and 8 ribbies for us. We rented Jazz Chisholm from the Yankees. He's going to be a free agent after this year, hitting just 200 in his first 15 at-bats, but should ultimately be better than what we had at second base before him, which was Brooks Lee. And against left-handed pitchers, we picked up Randy Arozarena, who's hitting .429 and 14 at-bats for us. He will be some outfield depth for us, obviously platooning with Joc Pederson, but figured bringing up that right-handed bat should help us. So the thought is that those moves should help both our bullpen and our offense. Unfortunately, really, we're not able to find a starting pitcher that was attainable for us, given that we certainly did not want to get rid of any of the key prospects or players in our organization, given that we're admittedly on the periphery of the playoff race. Unfortunately, right before the trade deadline, we found out that Robbie Ray, who pitched just 4 games for us before 1 injury, and then pitched a third of an inning on his rehab assignment and then needed surgery to remove bone chips in his elbow, is done for the year. So that will certainly weaken our starting pitching, and Ray was a guy who we were renting for this season with the Yankees retaining his contract from a trade last offseason. So he will almost certainly not be back with us. The only other thing that we've got going for us is Robert Bob Stevenson, who we've been spending $11 million a year on for the last over season and a half, and have not had him in the majors since he needed Tommy John surgery after an injury in March of 2025. Looks like he may be ready to begin a rehab assignment within the next week or so. Certainly with his stuff, if he's close to the pitcher he was before this injury, that will be a nice boost for our bullpen down the stretch. And then when we get to September and roster expansion, have several guys who can help us. We actually had to send Nolan Schonel down to AAA when we decided to go with the platoon of Pederson and Arozarena in left field. So it'd be good to get him regular action in AAA for this next month, but certainly looking forward to having him back on the big club as we push for a winning record and possible playoff spot over these last 2 months of the season. And we're 2-5 in our first 5 games of the month, but good news on the injury front. Stevenson ready to begin a rehab assignment, so we're going to send him down to AAA. Hopefully he will get an opportunity to get healthy, and we'll get an opportunity to get him scouted up and see if he really is anything close to what he used to be, because given that he's basically been untradeable, being out for a year and a half as a reliever making $11 million a year, would love to extract a small bit of value from him over these last several weeks of the season. And we're playing a bit worse here in August. The record is slipped to 60-59, so we are 6 games back in the division and 4th place now, as the Rangers have now gotten by us in the standings. Still only 2 out of the final wild card, so we are definitely lurking, but can't say we're doing much more than that. Did just promote Robert Bob Stevenson to the Major League team. Pretty much looks like he did before. Really good stuff. The movement and control, more average. He pitched 2 games in Salt Lake as a rehab assignment, allowed just 1 hit, which was a home run over 4 1/3 innings. But want to try to get something out of him, so we put him into a middle relief role for the time being. Sent down the left-handed reliever. I forget his name. His name was A.J. Block. Just sent him down. He's put up a 4.53 ERA in 57 2/3 innings this year. Allowed 10 homers and 30 walks, was below replacement level. So get him a little more seasoning over the next couple weeks down in AAA, and then I would think he would likely be on the short list of potential people to bring back up come September 1st. And unfortunately, the month of August proved to be not great for our playoff hopes. We're now below 500 at 66-67, 10 games behind in the American League West. We still are, to use the word I've been using, lurking in the playoff race, only 3 games out of the final wild card spot, and then there's a steep drop-off after us to the White Sox, Yankees, A's, Royals, and Blue Jays, who are all essentially out of it. So the good news is we're in the playoff hunt. The bad news is we are the worst of the teams that have any chance at all of making the playoffs in the American League this year. Hopefully, with the opportunity to bring 3 or 4, I guess it's 4 since we're a 26-man roster, and we expand to 30 in September. The opportunity to bring 4 players on will help us. August, after all of those trades that we thought were going to help us, by far our worst month of the season. 11-16 record, so 5 games below 500 in August. Our 66-67 record is only 1 game worse than Pythagorean expectations at this time. Slipped back to 6th in the league in runs scored, 7th in the league in runs allowed. So we're in the top half of the league in both categories at this point, which is positive, but we are just barely in the top half of the league in both of those categories. You can see our bullpen with the 13th ERA in all of baseball has definitely been a problem this year, even with the additions that we've made. And some familiar names back on the roster here in September, roster expansion, as we try to ensure that we can win at least 16 more games here in the month of September into October to clinch a winning record for this team. A.J. Block, who we talked about, we sent down very recently, and Chase Silseth, who we also sent down around the trade deadline, back on the Major League roster at this point. And the new additions, the 2 new players back, Dylan Moore was up with us. He was actually starting for us for a little while, was reasonably productive, but not a huge part of our long-term future, but gives us some speed off the bench and a guy who can play competently at a lot of defensive positions if we need to mix and match. And we also brought Sean back up. He hit only .212 in AAA, so he wasn't incredibly productive there, but he did play left field every day down there, and at least he's playing at his potential in left field at this point. We're going to continue to go with the platoon of Peterson and Arozarena in left field, though, so not going to be a ton of playing time for Sean, but we've got hopefully the big guns on the roster at this point. check in on what Jock Peterson has done for us. 284 average with 10 homers and 116 at-bats, so he has kept up his part of the deal as a rental. Arozarena, 281 with a homer and 64 at-bats, 342 on base, 453 slugging, so he's been fine as well. Jazz Chisholm hitting just 244, does have 2 homers and 12 ribbies for us, but when all is said and done, he's been slightly below replacement level for us, and we were certainly hoping bringing him on board we'd get a little more bang for the buck than he has provided so far, but there's still over a month for him to help us guide this team into the playoffs. And our poor play in August is unfortunately continuing here in September as things are spiraling a bit. A 2-5 record over our first 7 games, which drops us to 68 and 72. So 13.5 back in the division. Certainly seems like Seattle, who now has even a 10.5 game lead over Houston, is going to run away with the AL West in what was a very close division race for a long time. We've dropped to 6.5 back in the wild card race, so time is definitely getting short for us. Zach Neto ranks second in the American League in stolen bases. He's having another good, solid year for us after he started the year on the IL. But unfortunately, as we're trying to guide this team to a 500 record, and we're still holding out hopes the playoffs. Some significant injuries. Michael King, back stiffness, going to keep him day-to-day for the next 2 weeks. Probably going to still start him. It says it's not going to have any impact on his throwing, but doesn't mean that it's not going to end his season at some point. More acute right now, Jock Peterson going to be out 1 to 2 weeks with an oblique strain. He's been very productive for us, as we've talked about, with him going on the IL, though, for the next 10 days. That'll give Seanel a chance to play again in left field. So he'll get some at-bats there. Hopefully he'll take advantage of it because we've kind of got to get this record pretty close to 500 over the next week and a half to have any chance at all of competing for that playoff spot down the stretch. And clearly in our goal to have a 500 or better record this year, getting the record close to 500 over the next week and a half or so would help with that as well. And I mentioned with Peterson on the IL, going to get Seanel back into the lineup in left field. We also promoted Matthew Lugo. He had gotten off to a good start with us in the majors this year and then really got into a cold slump. Didn't honestly hit much better in AAA Salt Lake, but we'll give the 25-year-old an opportunity to prove himself as a pinch hitter and potential late-inning defensive replacement in left field over the next few weeks. He'll be a guy who's fighting for a roster spot on our team next year, most likely. And as we head towards the middle of September, we've won 4 in a row since the last time we checked in. So big series this week at home against Baltimore and at home against the Cubs. If we can keep the momentum going there, there's a good chance that we'll be playing important games in late September. Seattle's magic number for the division down to 10. We're in 4th place, but we could very easily get up to 2nd, but have to think at this point Seattle's all but got the division won with the lowest magic number of any team in baseball other than the Dodgers, who have already clinched. Looking at the wild card, still 5 back, so can't say that we're in a great spot there either, but 5 in 1 week over the next 6 games, and we could be right in the mix as we head into the final couple weeks of the season. Certainly at this point, the goal would be to go 10-8 at a minimum over these final 18 games to get us to the winning record that we were aspiring for at the start of this year. And unfortunately, right when we were feeling good about ourselves, we were swept at home by Baltimore. We did just win the first game against the Cubs, but certainly a 1-3 record to start this homestand. Not what we are looking for. Still 5 out of the final playoff spot, so with Detroit going losing 3 in a row, that has helped us stay close. But 2 games below 500, and the number of games we've got left to get the 9 wins at this point that we need to get to a winning season is quickly declining. Also, the injury news getting a little bit tricky for us. Sam Aldegheri, the reliever, partially torn labrum. He's going to be done for the year. King still dealing with that back stiffness, although he's been pitching through it, not necessarily particularly effectively. Ben Joyce also has a sore back at this point, and Zach Neto playing with a sprained finger that impacts his throwing. Do have Jock Peterson coming back, but feels like it may end up being a little bit too late for our team at this point. And we are fighting our hardest to keep things interesting. We ended up sweeping that series against the Cubs to get back to 500 at 75 and 75 on this road, on the road for the upcoming week at Baltimore and at Cincinnati. Hopefully we can do better against Baltimore at Camden Yards than we did at home. Taking a look at the standings, Seattle's magic number is down to 5. We have moved up back to 3rd in the division. Baltimore at 94 and 56 is about to clinch the AL East. Hopefully they won't be able to do it against us, but odds are even if we win against them, they've got a chance at doing it. Cincinnati at 79 and 71 is in a good spot for the NL wild card, where there's a 3-team tie for the 3 wild card spots. We've closed the gap on the final wild card spot to 4 games. So a little bit of progress over these last couple days, but may end up being a little bit too little too late. We'll find out over these final 2 weeks of the season. And we are trying to make things interesting. Although we lost the first game against Baltimore, we took the final 2, so now we head to the Cincinnati Reds for the final 3 road games of the year. After that, we've got Seattle at home to finish up the month of September, and then final game against Seattle in October, and then 3 against Cleveland. So 77 and 76 need to go 5 and 4 or better in these last 9 games to get to a winning record. Taking a look at the standings, since we are still fighting for a playoff spot, we've slipped back to 5 games behind the final wild card spot. But the positive thing about that is that there's now 2 teams for that final wild card spot, so we'd only have to jump the Rangers. But clearly with 9 games left, making up a 5-game gap in the standings is not going to be interesting. While we're talking about our friends in Baltimore, we may as well visit our old friend Mike Trout. You may remember a year ago we traded him away to get that contract off our books, and we got Adley Rutschman in return. Trout's been a little bit above average offensive player this year, a 109 WRC plus, a 2.8 WAR, 239 average, 19 homers, 55 ribbies, and 18 steals. So certainly not a $35 million player anymore, but he has played 114 games for Baltimore this year, so he's been relatively healthy, although certainly has had at least 1 stint on the IL. Looks like 4 weeks with a strained ab that he just came back from relatively recently was the most significant injury of his this season. And unfortunately, after winning the first game against Cincinnati, we lost 2 in a row. So we are 78 and 78 heading into the final homestand of the season. 5 games out of the wild card spot with 6 to go. So we are definitely not in a good position. I guess positively, Seattle has already clinched, so they don't have a lot to play for. And by the time we play the Guardians, they will likely be eliminated. The issue is that we're likely to be eliminated by the time we're playing those final 3 games against the Guardians as well. But it is what it is. Big goal at this point, I would say, would be to go at least 4-2 over these last 6 games and get to the winning record that we were aspiring for. That should also make Mr. Moreno happy, as he wanted us to play 500 ball this year. So we are significantly better than we were a year ago, but not as good as we had hoped for the postseason aspirations when we started this episode almost 2 months ago in Game Time. And we did get a 2-1 win in 10 innings against Seattle. Doesn't say who actually got the big hit. Joe Adell gave us a sacrifice fly in the bottom of the sixth to tie things up. Looks like Jock Peterson drives in the winning run in the bottom of the 10th inning for us. So obviously we cannot mathematically catch Seattle, and we are still 5 back. So the Guardians have been eliminated as Tampa Bay won yesterday. And at this point, we've got to go 5-0, and we need Tampa Bay to go 0-5 to have any shot at that wild card spot. And the Rangers are obviously still lurking as well. So seems like realistically the goal is to get to 82 wins at this point. As much as we'd love to have guided this team into the playoffs, our goal was to go from 64 wins a year ago and get to 500 or better this year, and we've got a reasonable chance of doing that with 5 games left. And unfortunately, we lost another extra inning game to the Mariners today, and that ends our playoff hopes. They scored Austin Meadows a 3-run homer off of Jimenez, who took over as our closer. So one day you're the hero, one day you're the GOAT, especially in September and October baseball. And the regular season is all the games that Los Angeles is going to be playing this year. 79 and 79. We're at least 15 games better than we were a year ago. But see if we can win 3 of these last 4 to get to 82. At a minimum, I want to be 500, though. And unfortunately, Seattle beat us again, so we've got to sweep Cleveland to get to 82 wins, and we need to win 2 out of 3 of these final 3 games just to get to 500 on the season. And unfortunately, we've only split the first 2 in Cleveland, so got to win this final game of the year to get to 500 on the season, and we do not. So unfortunately, 80 and 82 record, as I noted, 64 win team a year ago. So some significant progress, but we're hoping to get to 500, and we didn't quite get there. Finished 3rd place, 14 behind in the division. We ended up 7 out of the final wild card spot. Taking a look at the leaderboards, none of our players are among the top 3 in any of the major categories. So some definite progress for our Los Angeles Angels this year, but when all was said and done, didn't quite play as well as we had hoped. We did have that winning record in September, 13 and 12, so that's definitely felt good after 3 straight losing months in June, July, and August, but 1 and 3 in October when we were fighting to get above 500. When all was said and done, we made pretty good progress, even though the team didn't play as well over the last couple months of the season. Finished the year 7th in runs scored. Last year we were 13th in our first season, so that's pretty significant progress. And we finished 9th in the league in runs allowed. Last year we were dead last, 15th, so a little bit of progress there. When all was said and done, the defense was not good overall, 12th in defensive efficiency, dead last in zone rating, so definitely have some work to do there. But we did make progress this year, not as much as we would have hoped, as we've talked about, but if we improve another 16 games next year, we'll be a 96-win team, and certainly in the mix for the playoffs and probably in the mix for the division. But a lot of hard work that's going to need to be done this upcoming off season to ensure that we can get back to this Angels team being in the playoffs. But I can't complain too much. 80 and 82 record is definite progress from where we were a year ago. Next time around, we'll sim through the playoffs, take a look at who wins it all this year. We know it won't be us. And we'll also do roster review and see exactly who performed up to expectations and who we need more from next season. Vlad Guerrero, I'm looking in your direction. Until our next episode, Thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.